Hello folks, it's David here, and I would just like to take a moment to ask you to go and check out our sponsors Nordvpn. Internet security, very important. I'm sure it's something that you're concerned about as well. Me, I like to know that I'm the person in control of my data. I live on my phone, and the amount of stuff I do on it, from banking to documents to private messaging, I need to know is secure. We all know that there are bad people out there who will come in and try and get our details and try and spend our money for us. NordVPN prevents that, especially if you're using public Wi-Fi's or you're using Wi-Fi's away from your home. If you use NordVPN, you are safe and protected. It also allows you to take short holidays to places if that's ever required. It's a brilliant product. I use it every day and highly recommend it. And you can get a tremendous offer if you go to nordvpn.com/heart and hand. That's nordvpn.com/heart and hand, or use the code heart and hand to get up to 70% off your NordVPN plan. You'll also get one additional month for free. Risk-free with Nord. It's 30-day money back guarantee. So all you need to do if you don't like it is just say nope, and you'll get your money back. So go and check them out. As I say, it's very important. You'll get peace of mind. Go to nordvpn.com/heart and hand. Hello everyone, and welcome to Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast. My name's David Edgar. I'm your host as always. And this week I thought I'd mix it up a little bit because it was pointed out last week that whenever Rangers have a disappointing result, I tend to wheel out Andy McGowan and Martin Ramsey. And I didn't realise I did that, but looking back, that's true. So I thought after what was arguably Rangers' best performance of the season, I'd flip the script a little bit and roll out Andy McGowan.
Hello, folks.
And Martin Ramsey.
Thank you, David. Good to be on better terms.
Well, that's the thing. I think if you really wanted a subtitle for this show, it's best performance of season follows worst performance of season. Now, we're not going to dwell too much on Wednesday night, folks. If you want a full discussion on that, then Heart and Hand Extra from last week contained that. The last game is always the most important, as we know. And let's just get straight into it. First of all, Andy, yesterday, the thing that I heard that people kept saying to me, they said on our website, they kept saying, my friends, my family, we don't just need a win, although a win is clearly the most important thing, but we need a performance today. That a 1-0 or a sketchy 2-1 was not going to cut it, was not going to lift the mood yesterday. Anything other than a win would have been a disaster, but they had to try and get the fans back on side with how they did it. And I think it's fair to say that they did begin to make amends with what was an impressively committed performance.
Yeah, you'd alluded in a previous pod about getting the snap back, with this intangible thing that we had last year, the intensity. And we had it yesterday. We showed it for the first minute. You could see a noticeable difference in the types of tackles we were making. I think I've seen as many slide tackles in a Rangers game since the 80s. And we'd have taken any form of victory yesterday. But it was at the back of my mind that if we could have a really good performance, rack up a few goals, try and reclaim some of the momentum, then it would do us the world do good. It was badly needed, because yesterday was a big game for us. It was probably bigger than we all cared to admit. So it was fantastic to actually come out of it with such positivity, the crowd back on side, a lot of positives in the football in front as well. So it was a really, really good day. I thoroughly enjoyed it, to be honest.
Yeah, it was. That's a key thing. It was fun to watch, and it looked fun to play, and the players seemed to be enjoying themselves a lot more. Martin, one of the things that I think a lot of people kind of hoped for going into the game was, with Celtic playing first, maybe they would drop something. I didn't think they would. The high of Wednesday night would carry them through, and it did. But in a way, I think that made our performance even better, because had Celtic dropped points, then the crowd would have been lifted, the mood would have been better. And, there would have been an artificial stimulus, if you like. Whereas that wasn't the case. They did face an Ibrox that the fans were going to very much unhappy with what they'd witnessed, very much needing to be impressed. And the fact that they were able to do that, I think it might have been better because it didn't take away from the pressure. And I think it was pressure they needed to face, and I think it was pressure they needed to overcome.
No, I completely agree. We've seen post-winter break performances like this before, but they've been followed up with obviously spilling loads more points. And once Celtic got ahead in 19 and 2020, we crumbled. And I've spoken to a Rangers player about this. What happened? Everything looked so great at New Year. So they just kept winning, and we couldn't cope. So you're absolutely right. Celtic continuing on that trajectory, up the pressure even more, and therefore the response has to get all the credit that's coming to it, because it was everything we hoped for, we dared to hope for. For me, to be honest, these 3 league games falling Parkhead, the Hearts, Hibs, and then Dundee United at Tannadice, just needed to see wins. I wasn't overly bothered how we got them. That would represent a proper response and a proper statement that, right, you gave us a bloody nose, but we're still here. So can you do this? Can you continue at that pace? Can you continue with that approach to football, with hamstring snapping everywhere? Because we're not going anywhere. And then we've got quite easier fixtures getting into March that you would maybe hope for the kind of performance we saw yesterday. So, ideal, it comes early. But you're absolutely right. The pressure was up. And I've talked umpteen times, as you know, about the fears about hunger and fears about intensity right from the off. And I shared that. It was Laura Clark that sent me that interview with Dan Carter, the former All Black, part of an incredible team and an incredible sportsman, still talking about the difficulty to follow up a big win. All Blacks, great rugby team, but had really struggled to win a World Cup. It had become a thing, and therefore 2011 it was a holy grail, and they won it. They'd gone from good to great. And he says, look at any Rugby World Cup team, the season after, they're poor, because subconsciously they just can't go to that well again. They just don't want to. We've done this. We're great. There's a complacency. And in those moments in the season that follows, when you've got to dig deep and find something, it's just not there. And they had to really do a lot of work in terms of resetting. And these are top level competitors, to reset completely and say, we're going from great to greatest, to being a kind of legendary team. So that was always a concern. We do not have a dressing room when the 155 of seasoned medal winners, where that 55th league title, it just gets chucked on a pile with the others, and they say, that's lovely, what's next? We didn't have that. So it's been a big adjustment. And another thing to that whole debate, or that whole discussion, that's only really come to me recently, we didn't just win that league last season, they sauntered to it. It was a canter. They'd won it by March the 7th. They start this defence of the league title against an opposition who are a bin fire in August. And it just maybe, again, subconsciously leads to that degree of complacency. They don't have to go the extra mile again. They don't have to be relentless. Look at them. And then those 3 home draws, I think, are crucial, more crucial than anything we've seen this season in September, October. Motherwell, Hearts and Aberdeen. When Rangers had their foot in the neck and it should have snapped, Postecoglou could have got sacked because they'd have dropped more points there. But you were in those press conferences with Gerrard. There was just but we're still top.
Yeah, he was flat.
It's fine. We're still top. Don't worry about it.
We spoke about that, you and I and Adam, and I spoke about it on the shows, that I'd seen him angrier after wins.
Absolutely.
Last season.
So there's a complacency, I think. And I think it was right. Okay, so with this, don't worry, we're still top. Gerrard leaves. That debacle at Hampden against Hibs, and new managers come in, right, that's lovely, but look at your December, this is tough. And what do we get? We get the players finding a resolve, finding a hunger again to really dig deep and get through 100% in the league, qualifying Europe. Yeah, there's some stodgy performances, but right, there's a bit of transition here. Give them a break, that they've still done the biz. And we go off in that break, 6 points clear, Celtic will drop points again. This is no bother. And again, we see this complacency. Again, I think it's subconscious. I don't think it's deliberate laziness. But those 2 weeks from Pittodrie to Parkhead, but we're still top. Don't worry. And now we're not. And now maybe I'm hoping rather than it's too early to tell. But maybe I am just hoping here that on Sunday we saw finally that hunger come back in a kind of meaningful way, because those players have been ripped to bits since last Wednesday night, absolutely pilloried. Even some non-Rangers fans have done the same. And there hopefully is a sense of just rediscovering that hunger about, well, we'll show them then. Let's go. Let's go again. Because it's not as easy as that. And I've seen so many people just say, well, should we get a kick up the arse or maybe just a hug? If it's not there, it's not there. Don't care what a coach says. The situation has to change for that hunger to return. Or you have to be utterly elite. And with all the love in the world, we're not talking about a group of absolute elite athletes here. So maybe the situation, that final humiliation has been the thing that's recharged, or at least started that recharge. But it was lovely to see, and intensity is exactly that right from the off.
I want what you say there to be true. We don't have enough evidence yet, but
no.
The early signs of it were promising. So, absolutely. And I agree with you that there has been a subconscious complacency in there. Andy, I also think that the manager did learn a fair bit on Wednesday night about who he can trust and who he can't trust. And the team was changed yesterday. And a lot of eyebrows were raised before the match yesterday, because he changed the lineup, he changed the way we played, he changed the system. And before the game, people were saying, what, Lundstrom's in? I don't understand that. And Arfield on the right, I don't understand that. And then when the game unfolded, we saw why that was the case, because Jack and Lundstrom were sitting, but dynamically sitting, getting the ball and passing it forward quickly and closing down men and taking the ball off them quickly. Arfield was put wide on the right to lead the press, which he did. And from the first seconds, Rangers pressed. Rangers were right in at Hearts. Whenever a Hearts player got away, if a move broke down, there were 3 Rangers players round them to try and win the ball back. It was so much better than what we'd witnessed Wednesday night. And it was guys who were prepared to go the extra mile. As people pointed out, there was a couple of totemic things in it where Lundstrom, somebody kind of half nicks the ball off him, but he makes another 2 tackles in the same run to try and come away with the ball, which the fans, they roared it like a goal. And I think Hearts in the first half, particularly, I know they fell apart in the second, but I think Hearts in the first half looked shell-shocked. They did not expect to come to Ibrox and be put under the pressure when they had the ball in their own half that they were.
No, 100% correct. There was some big calls yesterday for Van Bronckhorst, and Wednesday, as cataclysmic as it was, and the fallout from it as expected as it was, I thought a lot of it was, it sounds all right. It sounds kind of placid now to say it was OTT, but I did think that a lot of what Martin's saying there speaks to me. That this team had credit at the bank. We know what they're capable of. We know what they did last year, and okay, it tends to have evaporated a wee bit, but it's still there somewhere. And you can look through all of sport, all of football. Liverpool's the most recent kind of topical indication of this. Sometimes you need to drop off to come back, and I just don't know. We're too early writing off Van Bronckhorst. We're too early writing off some of these players. Some of the other players, it's quite justified. And some of the calls that he made yesterday for that team selection were massive, because if things go wrong, if you look at it in a pessimistic light, if things go wrong, then these are the things that people will point out. Why did you play Arfield at right forward 3? When you've got Sakala on the bench, when you've got Diallo, people will pick up on that if it doesn't go to plan. But yesterday, what we saw was players step up, every single one of them. Now, but I'll single out Lundstrom for a second, because he was pretty integral yesterday. And he was absolutely fantastic against Hearts the first time round when we played him at Ibrox and we drew 1 each. And he deserved to be in a winning team that day. And it's kind of for that reason that I've often thought to myself, something's going to happen to this guy. He can't be as bad as we're thinking. Because of what I've seen with him, as he often slows the play down, he looks quite controlled, but he's not as energetic or effervescent as like Jack has been when we've seen him. So he came up, stepped up, drove forward, which I love to see. I've spoke about in pods the fact that he gets the ball with acres in front of him and takes an easy pass, keeps it simple. I think Jack complimented him fantastically. I thought Bassey was snapping into tackles. I thought Balogun was tight, as he always is. Tavernier was trying to get forward as often as possible. But the key thing was Marielos. And I know it sounds obvious to say, well, he's came back and he's knitted it all together. He is the man that makes our attacking football tick, because A, he gives us a strength up front, B, his interplay is fantastic, and C, he's the only striker we've got at the club that can handle entire defence himself. He was absolutely brilliant yesterday. And I think if he's not playing yesterday, I don't think what happens. So it's about personnel for me, and the balls of Van Bronckhorst to actually take a step back for Wednesday and say, right, this is what we need to do. He took a total departure from where we were. We thought that this 4-3-3 and sitting back, it was becoming a bit of a trope that this is what he does. And yesterday we saw that we can attack for 90 minutes. We can still keep the back door closed. We can have an adaptable formation where you've got Lundstrom and Jack as supposedly defensive midfielders, but still they were great attacking threats. They moved the ball forward. So it's all about what you do in your positions, as opposed to kind of falling into the trap that, we play two defensive midfielders or two sitting in front of the centre halves, and it instantly means you have to be a defensive team. So, Van Bronckhorst is no dummy. And I go back to Wednesday, I thought he was let down by his team. I thought that in hindsight, everybody was saying it was a ranked team, ranked set-up and the rest of it. I thought that was a perfect counter-attacking team. And I think it was a combination of us being caught off guard with Celtic, them being so up for it, hyper up for it, that they blew us away and we never get started. But the one thing that was missing on the Wednesday that we had yesterday was control of the ball, taking the ball off the centre halves, Hearts were pressing, but we were continually having the kind of brave attitude, take the ball. You seen McGregor playing it out for the back. We hardly had a kick up the park in the first half. We need to be doing that all the time, because we're actually quite good at it. We've seen it under Gerrard, how many times we played it for back to front. That partner play where it goes out for the goalie to Tavernier, who's almost in the corner flag, up the park. We can do it when we want to, but we need to have the bravery to do it. And that was missing at Pittodrie, and it was missing at Parkhead. We just did not take control of the ball, take the sting out of the game, and dictate it in the way we should be. So I'm delighted that it turned out the way it did yesterday. We're now going to the next challenge, which is Hibs, because this is another big pressure game. But I think Hibs will be looking at it and saying, right, what do Rangers do now? Because we've shown that we're an adaptable team. Van Bronckhorst has shown that he can use the people at his disposal. I think Arfield, his tactical, he's just intuitive. You said the other day he controlled the press. He did. He absolutely did. And that's because he's a more clever player than probably we give him credit for. I think he's been written off, and Van Bronckhorst has brought back to life. He's turned into a kind of really, really important player for us, whether he's sitting in the midfield or, I would never ever have thought in a month of Sundays of playing him in the position he played yesterday, but it was a masterstroke. So all positives, but, we're Rangers, so on to Wednesday and see if it works again.
Martin, I want to touch on something that Andy mentioned there, which is the importance of Alfredo Marielos. And it's been stated, many times over the years, but I think we can be quick to forget at times just what he does. And I was sitting watching that game yesterday and I thought, look, this surely ends the debate about who's our best player. Now, you can have a favourite and you can have a guy who's got a higher technical level. These are debatable things. That's subject. I don't really think there's an awful lot of... he's the one guy that I don't think there's a replacement who can come in and play. Now, there are times that guys go off form, absolutely, I get that, and you might make a change. Barisic is in that thing at the moment, but he's the one guy that if he's out the team, there's not a replacement. And yesterday, he was absolutely superb. As Andy says, he battered their defence to the point where our heart started with Cibic on him, their new centre-half, a big, tall guy who watched against Hibs, and he looked quite impressive. Whereas they actually had to swap and put basically two guys on. They had to put another defender on him and drop a midfielder back, and it still didn't really help them. He was fantastic. Everything about, he got his goals, which were both excellent finishes. The first one I thought was a tap-in, but when you watch it back, it's not. He still has a fair bit to do. It was a good finish. The second one, of course, is just outstanding. But it's been slightly lost, I think, in the criticism of Van Bronckhorst, for which I am as guilty as anyone, by the way. I'm not having a go. If it sounds like that, I apologise. I'm not. One of the things that has definitely been an improvement has been Marielos. Marielos' form post that Hibs semi-final, where, like the rest of the team, he was rotten, has been noticeably getting better and better and better.
Yeah, I do agree with that. In terms of some of your other points, in terms of what he does, there isn't a replacement. We can't play that way by putting Roof or Itten in there. And we couldn't play that way by putting Defoe in there previously. He does a certain job that no other Rangers player can really do. You can do other things and play other ways potentially, and that's a different ballgame. But yeah, when he's on that in that form as fit as he looks as well, then he's a huge loss when he's not there. And as much as Van Bronckhorst was also fairly, I think, pilloried during the week, we reintroduced, almost a new spine to the team from the starting 11 that started at Parkhead. So and Dingwall. So there are other kind of components there, but he brings other people in when he's on form. And to your other point, I get it. I get where you're coming from. When he's in the mood, when he's not, because he's a man down, he can still do things. He can still be effective for other players.
When he's off form, the ball bounces off him. You're absolutely right, and he's all over the shop.
He can still be foil for others to step up, even when he's not absolutely on it. Yeah. Sometimes, though, he, as we know, he has been a liability when he's not absolutely on it. But he doesn't look that way at the moment. And if that can continue till May, then obviously we have a shout of staying in the race and seeing what questions we can ask of them as that develops. But it's the impact on others. I agree with you about the first goal, that is not as simple as it looks, but it's about being in that place. You and I were in Dingwall. How many times Itten was not in that place when it looked obvious that he should have been. The goal is the Bassey pass and the Kent cross, which had to be then, right? Because that boy was covering, and if Kent had waited, which here's a microcosm. A couple of games ago, he may have waited. He may have maybe
he'd have turned back,
and tried to kind of cut in. There's a pass, first time cross, perfect. It was just such a great goal. And the second is very much an Alfie goal, just battering his way through, gets the break, and makes Hearts pay for that break, I suppose.
That leads me to two other players, Andy, that Martyn mentioned. One of which was dropped to the bench, Glenn Kamara. Glenn Kamara came on, and then I'm sure I wasn't the only one who, when I saw who had been put clean through, went, "Is that Glenn? What's he doing there?" And then he took it like a seasoned striker. A lovely finish and confident. He knew all the way what he was going to do, and he did it. Huge for him. You could see by his celebration what it meant to him. And the other one, of course, was Ryan Kemp, who had a howler at Parkhead. Watching the game back, any of these sort of allegations that come up a lot, is he's not interested, he's not trying. That's not true. Watch him. He is, he was, even the last minute, he's running back, he's trying to make things happen. He was just awful. His touch was awful, his decision making was awful. It was a dreadfully poor performance. But for both of them to come back from that, I think shows good mental strength, shows good resilience. Mm-hmm. But again, in the case of Ryan Kent, that's why he gets judged so so harshly, in my opinion, because he can do that. I mean, up to this point this season, I think he had something like 3 assists and 2 goals. And he got 3 assists yesterday and should have had a goal. He was unlucky with a finish. He should have scored, to be fair, but he'd done so well even just to make the chance. That's why these guys get judged. Glenn Kamara's the same. You know, we do judge them in a more harsh manner because we know what they can do. And they have previously set standards that, rightly or wrongly, we expect them to keep to.
No, I mean, we are harking back to last season, but last season was the standard. And I think I've used kind of terminology like Kamara graduated, Aribo graduated. They became Rangers players last year. And once you're there, you can't really go back to, being a peripheral squad player. And the thing with Kamara is that when Van Bronckhorst came in, he made 2 kind of glaring decisions. It was clear to see that he liked Arfield and he liked his ability to have the third man run and to be a quasi striker from midfield. And the other thing that he did was he made Glenn Kamara his number 6. He put him right in front of the centre halves and told him, "You're my main man in front of my centre halves," which, as I've spoken about earlier, is absolutely integral to how we play. Whereas previously, I kind of saw Kamara as complementary to Ryan Jack or Davis or whoever was the central figure in midfield. Kamara was graduated to that player. And we've seen that versus Dundee United at home. They totally nullified him. They cut off the supply to him. He didn't have a solution. He didn't come up with a solution on the park. I thought against Celtic, it was the same story. Our big problem was we couldn't control the ball because Kamara wasn't taking it off his centre half, so a man at his back. And so it was no surprise to see him on the bench yesterday. But he is a sublime player, and he can contribute greatly to Rangers. But he's one of the guys where you think he could get a wee bit more out of him, but maybe it's not his game. So we're talking obviously about in the final third. You see glimpses of it, like that goal yesterday. He can do it. He can shoot when he wants to, but he just doesn't do it enough. So it was good to see him come off the bench yesterday and score the goal, because much like Barisic, the form might be out the window right now, but personally, and I'm talking about me here, I don't think he abandoned the 2 players simply because they've had a period of bad form. And I think maybe Kamara will benefit greatly for the fact that Jack's back, that Davis is coming back, and that Lundstrom, hopefully, touchwood, is finding some kind of tangible form, because I think he is suited to being that complementary player to the rest of them. I think I'll be interested to see if we see him back in that number 6 position that Van Bronckhorst gave him when he first came. So
I
really,
don't think
we will either. I think
maybe at home to lesser lights, but not, certainly not in tougher away matches.
No. So I think that's when you say about him learning things about players on Wednesday, I think there's a wee bit of body evidence now that Kamara, he's maybe not quite where we thought he was. He's maybe not quite that player that we thought he was worth 20 million or so. He's back in the fold. It kind of kills any debate about form and reminds us all what a player he is. Kent, on the other hand, I totally agree with you. On Wednesday, Parkhead, piss poor. But the one thing that I thought was that Kent never ever hides. And in a poor night like that counts for something. Unfortunately, it's usually a prerequisite basic. But in that night, it set him apart because of the starting 11. He kept trying things. He kept trying to force the issue. He took players on. He never hid. He made himself look worse than he actually was because, I don't think he was getting much help. He had a couple of shots that were powder puff, but I was like, well, he's the only one that's shooting. But yesterday was him at his absolute dynamic best. Explosive, relentless, hurting teams, because I always measure the attacking players. Do you hurt the team? Do you get in that penalty box and make them make silly challenges or test the goalkeeper? He was doing that yesterday. He was really, really unlucky. Well, depends how you see it. It was either really a bad miss or he was unlucky with the one where he chopped inside onto his right foot and should have put it into the far corner and left Gordon standing. What a goal that would have been. And it would have killed the game even earlier. But I thought he was integral to everything we did yesterday. I don't know if he came in a wee bit for the wing. I think he's been isolated out the wing a bit too much. So when we've been loading Van Bronckhorst for playing wide men. I think he's went too wide at times.
Well, tactically yesterday, I found this quite interesting, that rather than both wings being the same, one wing, I think Kent was slightly wider playing the traditional winger role, but not on the other side. On the other side, Arfield was tucked in, leading the press, helping out in midfield and allowing Tavernier to go by him. And that's the first I've seen us do that. Now, you and I and Martin are of a generation, we remember Dick Advocaat's side, where if it was a winger, i.e. if it was Kanchelskis on one side, then it would be a left-sided midfielder on the other. Whereas if it was Neil McCann, then it would be a right-sided midfielder on the other side. He did that where you never got two wingers. You got a winger and a midfielder, and the side would change. But I think we did that yesterday. I think we mixed it up.
No, that's a great point. And Tavernier, I think one of the issues with what's been put towards Van Bronckhorst and sitting back, that's in inverted commas, is because he's tempered the fullbacks a wee bit. But we've seen it in the second half at Ross County that Tavernier came out in the second half and he was a good 20 25 yards further up the park straight away. And what a difference it made to us. I think we need to persist with that. Tavernier is far better further up the park as a quasi winger than he is as a traditional overlapping fullback. And if that means that Bassey or whoever has to sit back to offset that, then so be it. But no, it really, really worked yesterday. And Kent, he's a form player. I sometimes think his confidence dips, but he never ever hides. And sometimes things don't come off him and the crowd getting his back and so on. But he's just such an important player for us. He's absolutely dynamite. And when he's on his song, he's one of the best players in Scotland. He can do things that nobody else can do for Rangers.
Martin, I'm going to bring up a point. I actually saw it was a Hearts fan that made it yesterday, and it really did get me thinking. I thought it was a very interesting point, and I hope you do as well, and I hope the listeners do, but I suppose the proof will be in the pudding. But basically, a few Hearts fans were grumbling about Robbie Neilson and grumbling about the results and the way they play football. Now, from the outside looking in, he took them up at a canter, and they're, I think, 10 points clear in third. I'm not quite sure what else they're after, but even so, it's not my club. I don't watch them every week. I don't put money into them. I don't have the right to criticise that, so fair enough. But he said, I'm reading a lot of this from our fans and how unhappy they are and, what a bad result it was. He was like, yeah, we weren't good. He said, but where's this idea come from that Rangers are here for the taking? They've lost 2 games in 60. And, yeah, they had a draw last week, game they should have won. Yeah, they were awful at Parkhead. He said, but I keep hearing this, and he said, not just from Hearts fans, but from fans of other clubs that our Rangers are there for the taking. And he said, there's no evidence at all to back this up. And I thought, that's a very good point, that there does seem to be a fixation. I'm sorry to drop in the mainstream media, but it does seem to be portrayed a lot that, well, you're not going to get anything at Celtic, they're flying. Very rarely do you get the same sort of response about Rangers. And there is this general mood, which I think sometimes we as supporters can add to, which, we're not playing well, or undervaluing how we have done and really going nuts about the negatives and not being aware of the positive. And I'll sometimes get criticism for being too positive. You'll always see a wee group on social media of so-called Rangers fans who wait until there's a bad result and then they're out calling everybody, from me to the tea ladies to Jimmy, but everyone gets it. It's a strange way to live your life. But in general, there does seem to be this thing that sometimes there's an undervaluing of this Rangers side. And there are times they do drive you nuts. And, I was in and about them last week because they deserved it. It was a dreadful, dreadful display. But the idea that Hearts fans clearly had going to Ibrox yesterday is they're rocking and rolling, we're going to take them. It isn't borne out by evidence.
Well, football fans live in the here and now. They're not interested in the 57 games before, the winter break ended. They'll be looking at the 2 weeks before, which were horrendous. Or not horrendous, but they weren't particularly impressive, and you could not say that Rangers were flying.
You're doing it, which were horrendous, and then you go, actually, now I think about it, they weren't horrendous, they just weren't as good as I wanted them to be.
Okay. If you're a football fan and you're having a shot at the big boys, why would you? We're all talking about it getting into the game as well. This is a huge game, and there's nerves and there's pressure, but it's a home game against Hearts, so you can have it both ways. There was a lot of questions about yesterday because our form was poor. We didn't look at it. Hearts had already come here and stolen a point early in the season. They were involved in a bit of a ding-dong at Tynecastle in December as well. So, no one was writing about Rangers the last couple of weeks the way they've been writing about Celtic, because that's not how the form is. They were writing about that last season. You didn't want to face Rangers pretty much any time last season because there was just such a head of steam. And an intensity and all the things we've talked about being missing consistently this season, and hopefully can return to some degree. But I get the football fan thing there, that we could go. Now there's a difference between we could go and steal something and we should. I don't think, with all best will in the world, Hearts should expect to come to Ibrox and do that. They pressed pretty high. I don't think they were particularly negative. Just Rangers were on it as well, and it made for, I say, quite an even game, but it was delicately poised for an hour, and certainly that first 15 minutes of the second half. I think just because of where we sit, Andy and I would have got a better view of that chance just after the second half started than you would, because you're on the other side of the ground. I mean, that was terrifying.
In the posh seats.
Yeah.
We're in the posh seats.
Yeah, exactly. So there were moments where if you're a Hearts fan and you're blinded by that they are here for the taking, because form granted it's not good, and that spell, the only spell that Rangers really, and Gerrard teams used to do this to their cost as well, get drawn into the chaos of Scottish football. That chaotic first 15 minutes of the second half. Where you would have been thinking, look, there's a chance of grabbing something. Once Marielos scores the second, it's over, and of course they do capitulate. But we had the same fears getting into yesterday, so it's not exactly out of step for visiting fans who are not exactly used to success at Ibrox, thinking this weekend we've got a shout.
Andy?
No, I totally agree. I mean, this isn't a new phenomenon. You're talking about the kind of narrative around Rangers and Celtic. We remember, in inverted commas, Cavalier Celtic. It became a running joke through the 80s that, no matter how bad they were given this kind of characteristic that they were a Cavalier, all, pure football, and it was nonsense. And we still see glimpses of that, because Celtic are in top form just now. I mean, you think back to Rangers last season when we beat Hamilton 8-0, and we were absolutely purring like a Rolls Royce. Everything was working. They're kind of there just now, but it doesn't last forever. It's a fleeting time in a sports team or an individual sports person's life where you're in the zone. You're only be in the zone for that period, and then you naturally will dip. I still think we've got the best team in Scotland. We've not been shown it. I'm hoping that this starts to change for the run-in, but the Rangers support yesterday was excellent, because I worried. What it did prove to me is that Twitter isn't real life once again. We get sucked into this thing about Twitter, and we're talking to each other, and you come up with some wild kind of opinions. I thought the crowd were really, really good with Rangers yesterday for the first whistle, and getting the first goal certainly helps. But even so, I thought the crowd helped the team from the moment they took the pitch, and the crowd responded. The team responded to the crowd in that manner. It's a mutual thing. I just think Martin's right. We live in the here and now. We're all football fans. Results matter. I tend to see myself a wee bit differently, because I'm a wee bit more pragmatic, a wee bit more laissez-faire. I dare say. Straight after the game Wednesday at Parkhead, scunnered as everybody. 2 days later, I'm thinking, is that an outlier? It is, and it's having that perspective. Sometimes it helps you get through it, as long as you're not kidding yourself on. So, I agree with what Martin says there. I do think that we get sucked into it. I think there was some virtual shark throwing in the Rangers Twitter over the last week, I've got to say.
Well, all thoughts now turn to Wednesday, another home game against an Edinburgh side. We take on Hibs, Martin. Now, Hibs have not been good lately at all. I watched them against Hearts and they competed well. It was a game in which the football was a byproduct, really. It was one of those Edinburgh derbies. I just have in my head that all Edinburgh derbies are like that, by the way. Has there ever been one that was good? But it was entertaining enough, to be fair. But they then lost at home at the weekend to St Mirren, going down 1-0. Against that, it's Hibs. They'll turn up. They'll be very determined at Ibrox. They've nothing to lose. The pressure won't be as big on them as it was for a home game against St Mirren, for example. And it'll be a different sort of challenge.
It will be similar to Aberdeen coming here in October. Not exactly great form. New manager, young, untested. Quite a few question marks still hanging over them. But they look like world beaters. So yeah, you would expect a different level of Hibs performance, but I don't think it's the Hibs team that came into that semi final. Certainly not the Rangers team that came into that semi final. So I'm not expecting too much drama, hopefully, but yeah, it will be. You'd expect a mark up on what they've shown recently, but if we play like that, it really counts for little. That's not to say, by the way, that as much fun as yesterday was, and it was exactly what we needed to see, that it's there. It was better. Could have been much worse than Wednesday, but there were still issues. It was faster, but I still am not sure it was fast enough. I think there's an issue at left back. I'll be honest. I'm not sure Bassey can actually head a ball, and then he caught out at that back post worryingly. So it's not to say we've reached a panacea. We've suddenly found a complete reversal, and we're looking like we were, October, November 2020. It's just a lot better. There needs to be a steadier improvement as we go along, and it'll be very interesting to see really if Sunday or yesterday was just a fuck you, and it's a one-off, and it's again this, and we've seen it in patches this season where Rangers have responded, but they've only got the energy or hunger or whatever for one show only. We kind of need 14 of them now, and it needs to progress. It needs to be the same kind of approach right from the start on Wednesday night.
On that left back issue, Andy, you suggested to me yesterday you would bring in Barisic because he's a better player, basically, than Bassey, if the two of them are on form. Now, Bassey did some very good things yesterday. He drove forward, I thought, to good effect. He defence-splitting pass for the opening goal. I mean, it really was a beautiful pass. But, again, he made a mistake, very similar to the one at Ross County. It led to a goal last week. He was a wee bit fortunate it didn't this week. Defensively, he was slack on a number of occasions. Barisic, the last time we saw him, was dreadful. I mean, and he wasn't good against Ross County either. And those two images of him and his haunches as goals go in will haunt him. They'll always be thrown up. The manager has nice selection dilemmas. He brought on Ramsey yesterday. He brought on Sakala. He got a goal. He's got Diallo there as well. There's some nice headaches in and around the Stephen Davis is another one for him. Left back, he's got an issue and it's maybe not as pleasant.
Aye. That was the only negative for yesterday, is that Bassey was defensively, he wasn't sound at all. And I mean, I think we're being kind. That first 10 minutes in the second half could have costed the game with the two chances, and he was involved in both. And this is why I'm not quite as quick as some to write off Barisic, because I do think that if you're playing, against Dortmund, for example, I would rather play Barisic than Bassey. He's just a wee bit too raw at times defensively. Going forward, I really, really like him. Really like him. He's a powerhouse. He's actually got good footwork. He can get by a man. He can put a ball in. But defensively, there's big question marks. I don't think he's any better than Barisic in that sense. So it's a dilemma. What else do you do? I think Barisic will play against Hibs. I don't think there's any creation of that, but I think you'll see Barisic being bled straight back into, not straight back in, but back into the team. We had something similar earlier on the season when Barisic was injured and Bassi was playing quite well there in the lead up to the Celtic game. And I said at that time, I says I'd actually quite like to see Barisic brought back in because I want him up to speed for the Celtic game. And it goes back to Wednesday, where is that a kind of Rangers career-ending performance? It's no far off it, but we saw Wrexham have similar. I just think it was a really, really bad night, and I think to go to knee-jerk reactions where you write a guy like Barisic off the bat, it's probably too strong. But you only get so many of the games as a Rangers player, so it'll be interesting to see how he recovers for that.
The problem, Andy, with Borna is we nothing as bad as Wednesday, but we've kind of been here before, where he looked really fragile, and that free kick against St Mirren kind of saved relaunched his Rangers career. There's only so many Sinatras you can really pull off in a career at one club, so I think there's someone you said last night on just in chat, David, that at this minute Bassey's the future, Borna's the past. I think Bassey's the present. I don't think neither of them are the future. I think we have an issue there and it needs to be addressed.
That's probably
100%. I think left back will be a priority position for the close season.
Right, folks, well, I hope you enjoyed the show. We will, of course, be back on Monday next week to review the Annan game. We will have Heart and Hand Extra, or Adam will, I won't be on it, but Adam will have Heart and Hand Extra to review the Hibs match and preview that match for you. Just a wee shout out that you can win a signed 150th anniversary strip, yes, signed by the entire first team and management, if you sign up to play either Rangers Pools or Rangers Lotto at RYDC website. So go do that and you could be in with a chance of winning that. My thanks to Martin.
Oh, pleasure, David. Thank you.
To Andy.
Thank you, David, for getting me on when I'm not having to kind of placate everybody and cheer them all up because we've just either... Exactly.
Or get your calculator out.
Yeah. Basically, exactly. I thought it would be fun for you two to actually have the novel experience of, they played quite well. So well done to both of you for being able to adapt. See that the first team should take lessons from that adaptability, right? It's how we all grow. My thanks to Mike Lee and Paul Myers at Playback for all their support, our executive producers. And of course, if you want to hear more from us here on Heart and Hand, you want to hear more from Martin and Andy, then go to our Patreon, patreon.com/Heart and Hand. Thank you so much to everyone for listening to us. And let's hope we're feeling the same way Thursday as we're feeling today. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.